What's up, everybody, and welcome to episode 16 of the First and Foremost Sports Podcast. I am your host, the one and only Quinton Douglas.
Jimmy Covington was good, y'all.
What's up? You know we coming like MJ and Scotty, man. How you doing, Jimmy?
Man, I'm doing good, bro. How you doing?
Pretty good, man. Pretty good. I'm hyped up. We got some good topics on deck today. So, man, let's get right to it, shall we?
Let's go.
All right, man. So to get us started off, you know, Friday, I believe the news broke that five-star high school basketball recruit Makur Maker committed to the Howard University, the flagship HBCU. He's the highest ranked recruit to do so since 2007. So, Jimmy, what does this mean for the landscape of college basketball moving forward?
Well, hopefully, it'll send more black athletes to HBCUs, which is something that the black community has been wanting to happen for many years now. But just my thinking, I don't know how much it's gonna change because of what just happened with the G League thing. Just me thinking about it. If it was me personally with that type of talent, if I knew that I could go to the G League right then and make 300, 400, $500,000 and still get endorsements and all that, I probably wouldn't go to college. If I figured I was going to be a one and done, I wouldn't go to college. I'd go straight to the G League myself personally. But for the guys that aren't going to be one and done, then it's a perfect opportunity. There's nothing like a HBCU. I mean, personally, I don't go to one. I wish I could have, but tuition was a big thing for me. But you know, quite frankly, Howard was terrible last year. They were 4-29 last year. They were 2-13 at home, 1-14 away, and 1-15 in conference play. And they are a Division One program. They had a new coach. It was a first-year coach. It was Kenny Blakeney, who played at Duke from '92 to '95, and he's been an assistant coach since '95. So they got a lot of work to do. But just talking about Makur Maker, he's 6'11". He's ranked 16th in the ESPN Top 100 Prospects list. He's the fourth rated center. He's 6'11", and he goes to Hillcrest Prep in Phoenix, Arizona. He had offers from Auburn, Kentucky, Alabama, Memphis, Oregon, all the big schools. He's a big guy. He's very mobile, silky smooth jump shot. He's athletic. He's a good rebounder and good shot blocker. But of course, he has room to grow. Has a good handle for somebody that's his size, and he can score in the high post and low post. So he's an extremely promising prospect, and I think he'll definitely make Howard a better school. The Mid Eastern Athletic Conference doesn't get players of Makur Maker's caliber every year, and I think he can dominate that conference.
Yeah, bro. I'm right with you. While a majority of the highly ranked players will probably, keep going to the big Power Five programs, I do think that he's definitely making a step in the right direction with this move. I think for most athletes, the reason that they make for not going to these HBCUs is, for one, resources, to, training facilities, things of that nature. Then you have coaching, of course. The coaches are going to be, just a step below from those Power Five programs because, of course, they pay more. And as well as exposure, the big programs are automatically going to get the ESPNs, the ABCs, the big time networks. So, that's why we've seen really since probably the 60s when black athletes were first permitted to go to these universities that they've kind of slowly just strayed away from that. But, I think he's definitely going to be a trial run for future recruits. I do think he's going to have a dominant season if he's going to want to, keep his draft stock the same or, try to improve it going into the NBA, considering the fact that he will be playing lower competition. But I definitely applaud him for taking that step of faith, especially in our current climate. Um, he's taking that torch and per se he's lighting it as opposed to carrying it. We see 4 and 5 star recruits all the time go to these big universities and they'll ride the bench before they go somewhere smaller where they could just be the man from day one. But he could change that, and I think it'll also benefit you know, a star player in basketball has, you know, more of a chance to impact the program than a football player because that one star player is all it takes to, you know, pack out a gym and, you know, bring in more revenue for that school and that community. So, you know, looking at it from that perspective, I think is definitely a great step. But, you know, I think currently the G League still poses a bigger threat to the big college programs than HBCUs. Because, I mean, I don't know too many people who's going to pass up $1 million right out of high school. But it has been proven that that formula can work. You know, you've had successful NBA players like Willis Reed, Sam Jones, Charles Oakley, Ben Wallace, who all went to HBCUs, and even current guys like Kyle O'Quinn, and probably more prominently Robert Covington, who went to TSU. You know, right here in Tennessee. So you know, with guys like Mikey Williams, who's already said they're considering this, I think it'll definitely persuade them to, you know, at least heavily consider taking the HBCU route.
Definitely. I know you talked about exposure, and when it comes to basketball and when it goes to football, exposure is two completely different things. The number one recruit in college football could go to HBCU, and it might draw some attention. But I think basketball, you will be able to draw even more attention just on yourself. And Mikey Williams, you talked about him having HBCUs and in his top college choices, and I think that's important. But you know what I'm saying? I think the G League poses, it's a better situation for those guys because you're getting NBA coaching and you're getting partly accustomed to the NBA lifestyle right away. But by all means, if you want to get the college experience, then go to college. A lot of guys. Jason Tatum mentioned that his time at Duke was part of the best time in his life, and Jason Tatum was a one and done. He's only there for 9 months, but he said it's one of the best times in his life. So, if the college experience is something that's important to you, then by all means go to college. But if you're not really focused on the college experience, then I would say to go to the G League if you can.
Yeah, yeah, I'm right on board with you. Like I said, and like you said, also that exposure is really the biggest thing because at the end of the day, these guys are trying to get to the league. And you know what better way to get it than going somewhere where all eyes are on you. So I definitely think there's a long way to go on that front, but the gap could definitely be closed just a little bit, I believe.
Definitely.
Yeah. All right, man. So moving on to some NBA talk. So if you were a GM and you're building a championship roster, and you need a Robin to the Batman already on the team, which is a number two option, of course, would you take Paul George or Jimmy Butler?
For me, it was easy, and I'm going with Paul George. 6'8", 220 pounds. 6'11" wingspan. For his career, averaging nearly 20 points, 6 boards, 3 assists, almost 2 steals, shooting 43% from the field, 38% from three, which is great to elite, and 85% from the free throw line, which is pretty great too. And this season, he's averaging 21, 6 boards, 4 assists, a little bit over 1 steals, and shooting 43% from the field, 40% from three, and 88% from the free throw line. So Paul George, we know what Paul George is. Paul George is a bucket. He came pretty close to leading. As a youngin, he came pretty close to lead the team to the NBA Finals when he went up against the Miami Heat in 2012 and 2013. He was 22 and 23 years old. So, with the right team around him, he's shown that he could, potentially, well, pre-injury, he showed that he could potentially lead the team to the NBA Finals. And when you look at, his peak year, which I would say would be last season, that was his best season by far. He averaged 28 points, 7 boards, 4 assists, led the league in steals, finished top 3 in MVP and Defensive Player of the Year voting. He's a 6-time All-Star, 5-time All-NBA performer, 4-time All-Defense, and he's played 76 playoff games. So he's proven and tested. I think he gives you a little more in terms of versatility. I think Jimmy Butler is maybe a better playmaker, but I think Paul George has a more diverse scorer, and he's a better rebounder. He's a little bigger, so he's a better rebounder. He may not be as tough as Jimmy Butler, but I think he gives you more steals. He creates more turnovers. Neither guy has shown that they can really lead a team on it. Besides Paul, Jimmy Butler really hasn't had the opportunity to completely be his own man and lead his own team, except for this year. And we'll see how Miami does in the playoffs. But, we haven't seen Paul George lead a team, far in the playoffs since, 2012, 2013. That was before the injury. Since then, he's pretty much been, for a few years, he was the number one guy on a bad, Indianapolis team. And then he went to OKC with Russ, and he was a second fiddle there. And then he ended up going to the Clippers this year. He's a second fiddle again. I think Paul George is he's not – if he's your best player, I don't think you're able to win the championship. I think you can make it to the second round, possibly even the conference finals. But, as a Robin, I think you can win the championship as a Robin, depending on who your Batman is. And I think it also depends on, the mentality of your Batman. Because you have some guys that's your number one option, but they're not really leaders. And I don't really see Paul George as a leader as well. So I think you have to have a guy as your Batman. He has to be a leader as well. I think that's important. And I think with Jimmy Butler, he's more of a leader, but in terms of his talent and production, he's more of a Robin. So, but for me, I'm going to have to go with PG.
Yeah, man, I get everything you said, but for this argument, I'm gonna go with my guy Jimmy G Buckets, and we know the G is forget. But I give PG his credit. He's the better scorer, better shooter. I think one thing with PG, I don't think he gets enough credit for being, one of the best 3-point shooters in the league. Like you said, I think over like a 7-year period of his career, something like that, he shot like 38% from three. So I give him his credit. He's definitely a sniper, and we know what he brings on the defensive end. Like you said, he was an MVP candidate last year. Like, I'm a big PG fan, but if I'm a GM, I'm going with Jimmy Buckets. Like I said, I think Jimmy, he's the better shot creator for as big as PG is and for as good of a handle that he has. I definitely don't think he's as good of a shot creator as he should be, especially when you look at his highlights. I mean, most of his shots are coming off screens. That should tell you something. And then Jimmy Butler, once again, while being smaller, he's a better finisher than Paul George. Jimmy G can straight up play bully ball when necessary. And he could get to the free throw line more too. Because I believe I saw Jimmy gets to the line about 9 times a game. Paul George is only 4 or 5. So, take what you will with that. You mentioned it already. Jimmy's the better playmaker. For the Heat this year, for other teams, 76ers, Timberwolves in the past, he's shown he can play some point guard and, facilitate an offense. And I think in that area alone, he's marginally better than Paul George because, I will say he's probably never had that responsibility. But, just judging off what we've seen, Jimmy's definitely a better playmaker. And then one thing with Jimmy, he never disappears in the clutch. Paul George, on numerous occasions, has went AWOL in the clutch. When was that? Was that the year he was with the Thunder and they played
2017.
yeah, with the Thunder and they played Utah? PG went 2 for 16. They let a rookie, Donovan Mitchell, who had coronavirus, knock them out in 5 games. Not to mention, well, maybe it wasn't 5. It was 5 or 6. And then last year, they got bullied by Dame, who knocked them out in 5 games. Not to mention, hit one of the best series clinching shots we've ever seen right in Paul George's face. Jimmy ain't going to let that happen. And besides the 2018-19 season, when I'm not going to lie, PG was that dude. He was MVP candidate. But outside that year, Jimmy Butler has been the guy who scored more points in the fourth quarter. And then if you want to get technical, Jimmy Butler has the higher PER and he accounts for more win shares. So I think that pretty much tells you everything you need to know. And then ultimately, you brought it up already a little bit, but Jimmy's a straight up dog. And, being a Bulls fan, I know his backstory. He was homeless as a kid. He went to Marquette. He didn't have, too many big scholarship offers. Then he went from riding the bench to an all-star in a matter of like 3 or 4 years. So that same hard work and mentality that he brings to the game, he expects the same out of his teammates and nothing less. I mean, we saw what he do in Minnesota. He beat Cat and Andrew Wiggins with the third stringers, and he let them know like y'all need me. And on the outside looking in, you're like, oh, that's problematic, blah blah blah. But I don't know any team who wouldn't turn that down. Look what MJ did. He used to physically abuse his teammates, and look what they got him. I mean, even Kobe, you know for yourself, Kobe held his teammates to the highest standard. I don't see Paul George doing that. So if I'm the GM, I'm taking Jimmy Butler. Case closed.
I mean, hey, listen, you made some interesting and you made some great points. But like I said, bro, give me PG. He a better scorer. I think they're pretty much equal as a defender. Jimmy Butler, he's a better playmaker, I would say. The assists, especially this year, kind of speak for themselves. But this year, if you think about this year alone, Jimmy Butler's been a better player this year. But you gotta bring in consideration Paul George had surgery on both shoulders over the past offseason. And then I was watching, him. He was had an episode on All the Smoke podcast with Steven Jackson and Matt Barnes. And no, not All the Smoke. It was the podcast with Quinn Richardson and Darius Miles.
Was
And he
that
talked about
knuckleheads?
yeah, knuckleheads. And he said, over the course since coronavirus has started, and the league has been suspended. He just now has been able to bring his arms all the way over his shoulders, and he's still shooting 38, 39% from three this year. And so, he hasn't been healthy at all pretty much, and he's had other ailments this year, and he still put up similar numbers to Jimmy Butler, with the exception of assists. I mean, Paul George can pass, but I don't think he's ever been tasked with being a creator for others. Put it like that. I think they know he's a scorer. He's a scorer and a defender. That's what he is. And I think in terms of 3-point percentage, he's more efficient. Free throw line about equal. Jimmy Butler has the edge in the paint because he shoots more shots in the paint. He's better at the rim, which okay, I'll take that. But I think, like I said, it all kind of depends, on what your Batman is. So if your Batman isn't really much of a talker, then Jimmy Butler perfect for you. But if your Batman is a talker, then Paul George, he's perfect for you because they're gonna give you similar statistics, maybe a few points off here and there. Paul George may give you a more rebound or two more per game. They'll give you just about the same amount of steals, same amount of blocks. Paul George is like a better shooter. So I think for me personally, I go with Paul George. But like I said, I think it all depends on what kind of Batman you have.
Yeah, and I mean, going back to the injury thing, I think, that just points again to Jimmy Butler. I mean, he's had maybe a few nicks and bruises here, but other than that, like, dude plays through everything. Like, I've never really heard of him having a major injury, really, probably since was that Minnesota. And, he had them as a fourth seed in the West with them. Soon as he got injured, they dropped down to like eighth and, like barely made the playoffs. But that's another thing, with Jimmy, everywhere he goes, they win and the team gets better. You look at Minnesota, they sucked before he got there. They were relevant when he got there. He left, they suck again. Philadelphia, they couldn't get over the hump. He went there. They were one buzzer beater away, from the Eastern Conference Finals. He left. They got, chemistry issues. They're maybe, I think, what are they, sixth in the East? They're like
I believe so.
barely hanging on. They don't even have home court advantage right now, even though there is none in the bubble. And look at Miami. Nobody expected them to do anything this year. He has them right at the top of the Eastern Conference, and you have a few people that are saying they could possibly even beat the Bucks. Uh, Looking at PG on the other hand, outside of Indiana, Thunder, they were already a winning franchise. They didn't really do much more with him on the team. And then the Clippers, they were already a winning franchise also. And he, just latched on to Kawhi's tail. So looking at it that aspect too, I think Jimmy just has the edge. when it comes to intangibles over Paul George.
We have to agree to
But
disagree.
yeah, I don't think you could go wrong with either guy. We got our personal preferences.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. All right, man. So moving to the football side of things, after some pressure from Nike, FedEx, and Pepsi, the Redskins are finally, once again, considering a name change. So should they do it, Jimmy? And if so, what should the new name be?
I think they definitely should do it. I think it's long overdue. It's offensive to the Native American community. And so I think that's bar none. It should be done. It should have been done like years ago. It's derogatory. You have a lot of other names you could choose from. I've seen some articles with some names and some names I thought about. You already have the Kansas City Chiefs, so obviously you want to name the Chiefs. You got the Seminoles, the Warriors. Excuse me. I even heard the Federals, but the name that stuck with me the most was the Washington Red Tails. For those of you who don't know, the Red Tails, that's the name of it was in World War II, the Tuskegee Airmen. There was some military aviators. They were the first African American military aviators in the U.S. Armed Forces, and their name was called the Red Tails. So, thinking about that, that would definitely be a nice name. And I even saw on Twitter where they show a uniform design, and I even like the uniform design. Same colors, just a different design. So I would say the Red Tails, just based off African American history. I think that'd be a great gesture, towards the Black community. But if you want to keep it, with a Native American name, I would say the Seminoles or the Warriors.
Okay, history lesson. I hear you. I hear you. But I'm right with you, bro. I think this change was long, long overdue. The term Redskins is definitely highly offensive to those of Native American descent. And this has been debated before. I think I saw back in 2013. Dan Snyder said in all caps, like, we never changing the name Redskins. But I think now, with our current social climate, and the fact that he's feeling pressure from these big major companies, I mean, you got Nike, FedEx, and Pepsi. Like, it doesn't really get any bigger than that when it comes to big time companies. So when they're threatening to sever ties with you, and Nike, is pulling your merchandise from the shelves, like, they pretty much forcing his hand at this point to make a change. Like I said, this is the issue long before Dan Snyder was even the owner. But it's ultimately with everything, like we say, it's all about money and financial gains. And Snyder, as a billionaire, of course, he's going to always think about his money before anything. But one thing about businessmen is they won't make, bad decisions for their business. And, at a time like now, no one really wants to be associated with anything racially offensive. And, like you said, there's the Chiefs. You got the Seminoles at Florida State. You got the Chicago Blackhawks in hockey. So there's definitely alternatives they could choose. But if I had to pick something, I'm definitely on board with the Red Tails that you mentioned, or even something that references to the nation's capital, considering they are in Washington D.C. I think it's pretty crazy that the nation's capital team has had such a offensive name as their mascot for so long, and like it's just now about to be changed. Because I think even in the MLB, the Cleveland Indians, I think, are in the process of changing their name and logo too, which is also, a red Indian. So, if it's not Red Tails, maybe something like the Capitals. I don't know. It's not as catchy, but, like I said, it references the nation's capital. So I definitely think this is long overdue. And probably if not this season, in the next season, it'll probably definitely be changed.
And like not only like I said, like we both mentioned, it's offensive, but also, I feel like it's money talks. This is a prime example of money talks. FedEx years ago paid the Washington Redskins $205 million to name their stadium, to be the name of their stadium. And
Mm-hmm.
they told him they wanted them to change the name, and like I said, Nike pulled all the Redskins merchandise. Like money talks, and it's a shame that it took big time sponsors and potential loss of money to change the name that was racially that was offensive to a race of people. So
Right. Well, I think we're definitely both on board with that one. So, moving on to our next topic of discussion, which actually includes a Washington Redskins player. We had three rookie wide receivers in the NFL who balled out last year. Those guys were Washington Redskins receiver Terry McLaurin, Tennessee Titans receiver A.J. Brown, and Seattle Seahawks wide receiver DK Metcalf. So, Jimmy, out of those three rookie receivers, who are you starting, who are you benching, and who are you cutting?
well, first of all, I'm just gonna tell you, Arthur Warren Brown, AJ, you my starter, my guy. Terry McLaurin, I'm gonna bench you, and DK Metcalf, I gotta cut you. I'm sorry. If you listen to this, bro, I'm sorry. Hopefully you can be on the show. Hopefully, this don't keep you from being on the show one day. But AJ, I'm gonna give you my case for starting AJ. Uh, coming out of college, I thought he was the best receiver prospect, that there was, and he's pretty much proved that he basically is, or it's an argument. He's one of the top two guys. I would say. He stands at 6 foot, 226 pounds. He's built like a running back. He played all 16 games last year, led all rookies in receiving yards. He had 52 catches for over 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns. He led the NFL in yards per catch and big plays. He had 6 receptions of over 50 yards. That's the definition of a big play receiver. And he didn't run the fastest 40 time. And so, it's showing you that, he gets a lot of rack yards. He able to break tackles. He runs good routes. But he had 100-yard receiving games also, and only 5 targets a game. So he put up, major statistics and not a lot of targets. And he played with Derrick Henry, Corey Davis, Janu Smith, and Ryan Tannehill. So, he had some guys that he had to share touches with, and he produced majorly. And so, he led the Titans in receiving as a rookie by over 450 yards. And if you think about his number 2 receiver is Corey Davis. Corey Davis is a former top 5 pick. And so, you got to think about it with his, rack ability, his, route running ability, his toughness, all of that stuff. I think all that combined, it makes him the best receiver in this class. I think that's who I'm going to start definitely. In terms of the bench, Terry McLaurin, Scary Terry, he already got a nickname. Super fast guy,
Scary
had nine,
sight.
had 919 yards in 14 games last year. He had 3 100-yard receiving games, caught 62% of the passes that went his way, and he didn't have a lot of talent around him. He had an aging Adrian Peterson, and at quarterback he had Dwayne Haskins and Case Keenum. I think the Redskins might have had the worst quarterback situation in the league last year.
No doubt.
Dwayne Haskins was a rookie. He improved as time went along, but he started off very slowly. And we know Case Keenum is a career backup, a journeyman. So we know what he is. And he led the team. He didn't really have any help in terms of receivers either. He led the team. The next closest guy only had 365 yards. So, he's pretty much doing it on his own out there. And he played some tough teams last year. So, Terry McLaurin balled up. The case could easily be made for him for me to start him. But for the sake of this, I gotta go AJ as my starter. And I gotta cut DK Metcalf. We know what DK Metcalf is. He's 6'4", 229 pounds. Ran a 4.340. He's a physical freak of nature. He
Nasty.
played in all 16 games last year. He also had 58 catches for 900 yards and 7 touchdowns. My thing with him is he dropped a lot of passes. He was tied for 10th in passes and drop passes with 5. And we know that he's not the best route runner, which he improved a lot throughout the season. And it all culminated in the playoff game where he had 160 yards against the Eagles, I believe. And so, he played as the year got on. He got better. He only had 100-yard receiving game during the regular season. He had 2 all of last season. But he plays with some great players. He has Russell Wilson. He has Tyler Lockett that's across the field from him, and he has Chris Carson in the backfield. Chris Carson is a tough runner. They got a good, decent defense. So, I think, maybe ultimately he could have the best career out of them all because he's playing with Russell Wilson. and he's only going to get better. But for right now, I will have to cut him because he's the worst route runner out of the bunch. He doesn't have the best. He has the worst hands out of the bunch too in terms of drops and catch percentage. So I'm gonna have to, even though he's the most physically imposing, I'm gonna have to cut DK.
Okay. Well, I could say, we both agree that we cut DK Metcalf. But I feel like for the most part, it's kind of splitting hairs between AJ Brown and Terry McLaurin. But I gotta roll with my guy, Scary Terry. Like you said, defensive back's worst nightmare. I'm gonna start him and I'm gonna bench AJ Brown. But Terry McLaurin showed us like he was the most skilled receiver out of all these guys last year. We know he can take the top off of defense. His best attribute, of course, is his speed. He ran a 4.35 in the 40 last year. And, not only did that speed show up in the 40, like it showed up on the field too. Like he was burning dudes. They were scared of him. And not only is he fast, he catches the ball in traffic. 2, 3 guys around. He's not scared to run over the middle of the field, take a big hit. I think I saw a stat. He was number 1 in the league in contested catch percentage, and that was out of all receivers, not just rookies. And then also in his arsenal, he can run the full route tree. Like there isn't a route he can't run. And I think when you look at that combination of talent with the route running, the contested catches, and the speed, only other dude I know in the NFL is doing that is Julio Jones. And, that's pretty good company to be in. And I think Darius Slay, he even said last year, which he goes up against some good receivers. I think he went up against Allen Robinson, Amari. He's going up against Devontae Adams twice a year. Stephon Diggs also. But his second toughest cover that he said last year behind Keenan Allen was Terry McLaurin. And I think that says a lot considering, Darius Slay is one of the elite corners in the game. But you have to give Terry credit, We know how dysfunctional of a franchise Washington is. I mean, look at the name mess they're going through right now. They had a musical chairs at quarterback. You mentioned Case Keenum and Dwayne Haskins. They even had Colt McCoy starting quarterback a few games last year. Like it was terrible. And the name Colt McCoy speaks for itself, so that should tell you everything. You also brought up, he missed 2 games with injuries. So, that of course affected his numbers a little bit. But looking away from the stats, you talked about how he was all the Redskins had. He accounted for 28% of their receiving yards, which was 6th best behind only Michael Thomas, Cortland Sutton, Allen Robinson, Jarvis Landry, and Devontae Parker. And then he also accounted for 40% of their passing touchdowns. I believe their quarterbacks combined only threw 18 passing touchdowns last year. It was awful. And I even looked up for fun, to get at you a little bit. We know how bad Amari Cooper is in away games as a receiver. And, he's $100 million man now. But in 8 away games, this is laughable. Amari Cooper had 320 reception yards. Terry McLaurin, as a rookie with YMCA dudes at quarterback, had 368 and only 6. Those 2 games he missed with injuries just so happened to both be away games. And if you take away one of those games and only count 5, he still had more away receiving yards than Amari Cooper. That was crazy. But enough bashing Amari Cooper. Moving on to A.J. Brown. Statistically, he was the best rookie receiver last year. He was able to put up 1,000 yards despite playing with Derrick Henry. We know what he brings to the table as a bell cow running back. And then also he wasn't even a full-time starter until week 9 against the Panthers last year. But looking at his stats from week 9 to 17, He had 30 catches for 703 yards and 5 touchdowns. If he did that over a full 16-game season, he would have had 1,400 reception yards on only 60 receptions. Like, that's crazy. But, that just speaks to his explosiveness. And, he's a threat to go to the house every time he touches the ball. And I think that was evident by the fact that he was second in the league in yards per catch. But he already showed, he's the big dog in Nashville over Corey Davis, who's been such a disappointment. Uh, just pitiful. But he's that rare combination of speed and physicality that you look for in a receiver. And then not only that, but the Titans also play to his strengths. Using him on crossing routes and things like that to hit him in stride. And, that really allowed him to showcase his ability to blow by defenders. And he's also a good run blocker, which you have to be to play with Derrick Henry. And to get to why I cut DK Metcalf, for one, I want to be known, like, dude was so disrespected coming out of the draft last year. I remember before he even played a down in the NFL, like, people were already like, oh, he's a bust. He's just a musclehead. Like, I know we all remember the pictures of him with no shirt on. Like, dude was ripped, but he proved everybody wrong. And I think we saw that with his 900 reception yards and 7 touchdowns. And unlike A.J. Brown, he also showed that he can show up when it matters in the playoffs. He had like 219 receiving yards in their 2 playoff games, including I think he had the game-winning – or not game-winning, but game-sealing catch like on 3rd down in the wild card game against the Eagles. But he proved that he could do more than go routes. He runs double move routes really well, stop and goes, things of that nature. And a knock on him was also his ability to separate at the line of scrimmage. And he showed us, even as a 49ers fan, twice a year, he was cooking the Kello Witherspoon. So I definitely don't doubt his ability to separate the line of scrimmage. But I think one thing we have to look at when judging him, he definitely benefited from playing with Russell Wilson, who's the second best quarterback in the NFL, by the way, in case you were wondering. But he could have had more production, if Tyler Lockett wasn't already the number 1 receiver there. And then also you have to remember, for some odd reason, the Seahawks still are a run-heavy offense despite the fact that they have Russell Wilson as quarterback. Like, that's still crazy to me. But like you brought up, his biggest areas of weakness are, like you said, his drops. I believe you said he was, tied for 10th in drops last year. He also lost 3 fumbles, which I believe was like the second most among all NFL receivers. So if he could just, strengthen those hands and get some stronger hands, you already talked about how much of a physical specimen he is. Like, for all we know, he could be the next Megatron.
Like right now, I think DK Metcalf, if you want to throw a jump ball, I think he's the worst out of the 3 in terms of jump balls. But you saw in the playoff game how much better he got over the course of the season. I think that all started in the offseason with him working with Russell Wilson. I saw some videos. I don't know about you, but I saw some videos of those guys working out. So, he's already proven that he can put the work in and improve, mid-season. A.J. Brown, being being in Murfreesboro, I heard a lot about A.J. Brown. And, he balled out. He was more than what people expected him to be in year 1. I expected him to ball out year 1. That's exactly what he did. And I didn't really know much about Terry McLaurin, but he burst onto the scene and he opened my eyes, a lot. He opened my eyes a lot. I actually had him on my fantasy team, and he balled out for me in my fantasy team. So I definitely appreciate that. But with the bench and the starting thing, you can't go wrong with either guy, with AJ or Terry. It just all depends on what you have surrounding you and what type of offense you have. Because I think if you want more explosive plays, then you want AJ Brown. But if you want, more precise routes, 13, 14 yards to catch, then you got Terry McLaurin. So, it's just all depending upon your preference and your scheme.
Yeah, for sure. I completely agree with you, bro. And I be trying to tell y'all, them Ohio State boys different. Y'all saw how underrated Michael Thomas was, and look what he doing now. Easily top 3 receiver in the league. Terry McLaurin might just be the next Michael Thomas. Guess we gonna find out.
I don't know.
You said you don't know about that one. Look, hey, I brought up the stats. Don't make me get back on Amari Cooper.
But don't do that. If you want to remain friends, don't do that. I've already told you my disdain for that contract, and I did not paid that man $100 million. I was so upset.
Paid him $100 million just to go draft another first-round receiver.
I trade him. I right now. I don't care. Dallas Cowboys fans be mad. My dad, I know you're gonna see this. Hey, listen, I would trade Amari Cooper for AJ Brown and Terry McLaurin right now.
That's bold.
Matter of fact, I might go do it on Madden when we get done.
You ain't got it, bro. That's disrespectful. That's y'all $100 million man, bro.
Like they paid this man $100 million to not play away games, essentially.
Man, I think I saw. Was it the game against the Jets or the Patriots last year? He had like 0 receiving yards.
Probably the Patriots.
I was like, what did he do? Just stand on the sideline?
And even like I was watching Terry McLaurin highlights today. Even when they played New England, even he was making plays against Stephon Gilmore. Come on,
bro, he was cooking Stephon Gilmore.
Come on, bro. Like Amari been in the league like 4 or 5 years now. Like, come on, bro. You can't not show up, bro. I know he was a little injured, but come on, bro. You gotta have at least 1 reception, my God.
Like Terry McLaurin.
Come on, bro. Terry McLaurin, a rookie, and like it ain't like Amari Cooper slow. Amari Cooper got that speed. We saw against the. When he plays the Eagles, you see the separation because he loved it playing against the Eagles. But
the Eagles are terrible.
Hey Jerry, if you happen to watch this, listen to me, man. Trade Amari Cooper, get Terry McLaurin. You didn't pay him much guaranteed money. He didn't get a lot of guaranteed money. Eat that, you know what I'm saying? Trade for AJ Brown and Terry McLaurin. It'll work in the long run. Pair them with CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup, and there you go. You get the best group of receivers in the league.
I sure hate to see it. But hey, man, you got anything else you want to add in?
Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter.
Always. Well, we appreciate y'all as always for rocking with us and tuning in. Be sure to, join our Facebook group on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at First and Foremost 8. You can follow us on Instagram at first_and_foremost_. You dig? And I think, is that all? Yeah, that's all our social media handles. Yep. And we'll also be dropping a YouTube channel here soon. So be sure to be on the lookout for that also. But, episode 16 in the books. I am the one and only Quinton Douglas.
And I'm Jimmy Covington.
We out.
All right, thank y'all.